Obscenity exemption statutes. What are they? Well, they're nasty little buggers, that's for sure. They are loopholes in state laws that protect child groomers and communists while they expose children to obscene or sexual content in schools and public libraries. Parents, grandparents, guardians of children, we can do something about this as long as we are armed with the proper knowledge. So let's not waste time, because kids need saving and protecting.
The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion.
Okay, first things first. Graphic content warning for today's episode. This episode is not for little ears or eyes. So, if they are in your room, they are nearby, I recommend sending them away or waiting to watch this episode until later. Okay? You've been warned. All right, regarding obscenity exemption statutes. There's an organization called Courage is a Habit. And if you go to their website, they have a tools or resource section, and you go there and parents can use this to arm themselves with quick information to reference about this sort of thing. One of the guides you can download is titled Why K through 12 is Filled with Pornography. This guide explains that there are federal laws that protect minors from obscene content. They reference a quote from a Supreme Court ruling. Quote, transmitting obscenity and child pornography, whether via the internet or other means, is illegal under federal law for both adults and juveniles. And that's Reno versus ACLU, 521 U.S. 844 in 1998. I don't even know what those numbers reference. I'm assuming case numbers. The guide from Courage is a Habit, it states, obscenity is not protected under First Amendment rights to free speech, and violations of federal obscenity laws are criminal offenses. Obscenity is defined as anything that fits the criteria of the Miller test, which may include, for example, visual depictions, spoken words, or written text. So, the guide also explains how activists have exploited the loopholes in different states. These loopholes are called, again, obscenity exemption statutes, and they protect child groomers from liability as they give pornography to kids. That's putting it plain and simple. Another quote from the guide says, currently 43 states have this obscenity exemption statute. This was quietly pushed by radical groups that support the teachings of pedophile Dr. Albert Kinsey. They argued that sexual material should be considered sex education if presented in a classroom. So, as you can see, the way they explain it, they're telling the truth, people who want to groom kids, expose kids to obscene content that they are not developmentally ready for, they exploit these exemption statutes. They exploit these laws by giving this stuff to kids in libraries or public schools, and at taxpayer expense, mind you. Unfortunately, West Virginia is one of those 43 states with an obscenity exemption statute. The state code is in section 61-8A-2, and it's titled Distribution and Display to Minor of Obscene Matter. Penalties, defenses. A says, any adult with knowledge of the character of the matter who knowingly and intentionally distributes, offers to distribute, or displays to a minor any obscene matter is guilty of a felony, and, upon conviction thereof, shall be fined not more than $25,000, or confined in a state correctional facility for not more than 5 years, or both. B in that section says, it is a defense to a prosecution under the provisions of this section that the obscene matter, number 1, was displayed in an area from which minors are physically excluded, and the matter so located cannot be viewed by a minor from non-restricted areas, or 2, was covered by a device commonly known as a blinder rack, such that the lower 2/3 of the cover of the material is not exposed to view. So basically it goes on explaining that those who have that material on display will not be held accountable as long as they have it in a restricted area away from kids. There's different versions of that. And as long as they took reasonable measures to protect kids from accessing the material. However, the most problematic part, of course, of the state code is the next part. Section 61-8A-3, exemptions from criminal liability. The criminal provisions of Section 2 of this article do not apply to a bona fide school in the presentation of local or state-approved curriculum, or B, a public library or museum which is displaying or distributing any obscene matter to a minor only when the minor was accompanied by his or her parent. C, a licensed medical or mental health care provider or judicial or law enforcement officer during the course of medical, psychiatric, or psychological treatment or judicial or law enforcement activities. And the rest of that section goes on to explain other exemptions, like legit reasons why this matter would be shown to children or discussed with children, actual scenarios. But obviously the problem is it exempts schools and libraries from criminal liability if they show pornography to kids because they consider it educational. So it seems that the intent of the law was maybe to allow the teaching of basic sexual education or reproduction in schools. But the exemption is far too broad, which is exactly why these porn books keep popping up in communities around the nation. What is driving all this? Behind it all, of course, it's spiritual. There are unseen forces of the darkness of this world, the spiritual wickedness in high places that Scripture mentions. That's what's driving it. The enemy, Christians know this, the enemy wants to corrupt our children. If you corrupt the young generations, they rebel against the older. That's the simple and biblically obvious answer. But there are surface level carnal factors pushing this stuff as well. Remember when I referenced at the beginning of the video, communists? Well, I wasn't being hyperbolic. A woman by the name of Kelli Buzzard wrote an article titled From Kids to Comrades, and it can be found at americanmind.org. An excerpt from the article states, like their ideological forebears, American radicals know too that kids play a unique role in the revolution. These critical theorists are disciples of radical philosophers like George Lukács, who served as a deputy commissar for culture in the Provisional Hungarian Soviet Republic in 1919. Under his teaching, they strategically target our youth. To the horror of his fellow Hungarians, Lukács pioneered a sex education curriculum for Hungarian public schools that promoted early childhood sexualization, and promiscuity. By introducing sexual activity and pleasure to children at a young age, Lukács believed that he could eradicate an idea he considered a chief roadblock to revolution, that of innocent childhood. Lukács understood that stable societies based on family life and strong on child protections tend not to produce radicals. Okay, parents, so the key takeaway that I want you to cement in your memory is that the people defending giving porn to kids or making it seem like it's no big deal, they don't think child innocence is worth preserving. In fact, they intend to destroy it on purpose because they don't like the way the West is run. They don't like the way America functions under our Judeo-Christian values and our capitalism. So, of course, they want to destroy conservative Christian mores. Of course, they'll never willingly publicly admit to that. All right. Now for the part of today's episode that is going to be the most interesting for you all. And I'm excited to give you this. Some backstory. On January 24th, the West Virginia House of Delegates had a hearing on House Bill 4654. This bill is sponsored by Delegate Steele, and it would remove the exemption protections from West Virginia Code. A good bit of citizens spoke in support of this bill. There were grandmothers, mothers, and preachers. Among those opposed were the usual suspects. Ash Orr, a gender-confused woman that I've talked about in one of my prior episodes. A gender-confused man. I think a lesbian spoke against the bill. And I think he used the Bible. He tried to use the Bible, claiming that it has graphic sexual content in it, which those who have actually read the entire Bible know that it does not go into graphic content anywhere near the kind of books that we're hearing about today. And, of course, an employee of ACLU. But a couple of those who opposed the bill, they really stood out to me. Before I talk about these next two guys, let me first reiterate this. I do not encourage or condone any harassment or violence aimed at these people with which I disagree. I don't want any incitement of violence against people that I cover on my shows. I strongly disagree with their socio-political stances on this topic, and it is my opinion that they are defending giving porn to children, though they won't ever word it that way themselves. They frame it in a way that current law does, of course, which is the entire point of having the law changed. Laws can be unjust. In fact, this exemption statute is. And that's why parents are speaking up, folks. Okay, the first guy was Mickey Blackwell, doctorate in education. He is the executive director of the West Virginia Principals Association. He berated the lawmakers when he was at the hearing, putting on the pretense that the lawmakers just came up with this bill on their own, as if it's just something that they wanted to do on the fly. But he kind of acted like that, rather than the fact that it was the constituents who brought this issue up to their representatives and want this law passed. He then goes on to say in the hearing that the people he really wants to hear from are the parents of West Virginia. And he put his phone number out there for all of us to call. So, naturally, as a parent myself, I took him up on that offer. Here's a little bit of that.
Hello, is this Mr. Blackwell?
Yes, it is.
Hi, my name is Ron Hurst. I was just calling. I saw the House hearing the other day on House Bill 4654. I saw that you spoke up there, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to just say thank you for speaking and telling about your position on the issue.
Oh, well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear your position on censorship and speaking up and talking about the what's going on with these books. And
Mhm.
I understand you want to stand up for marginalized people.
All right, so as you can see, I'm luring this guy in with some sweet words, trying to get him to talk.
Well, I think it's important. Who are you with, sir?
I'm just a parent, of West Virginia, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, I remember you put your phone number out there and invited parents to give you a call, and said you had some other people that you could put us in touch with if we had questions.
Yeah. I would be more than happy to. Do you have kids in school?
Yes, I do.
Good. We need all the parents involved we can get, positive and in any way. The biggest thing, the biggest success to a kid is having a good parent support and setting goals and setting expectations. And
Notice how he says we need all the parents involved, positive and in any way. He wouldn't just say positive and negative, because obviously he wants the parents to only be agreeable.
so, have you read any of these books that have been discussed?
I have not yet. I mean, I've heard of some of the controversial ones. There's one I think called "All Boys Aren't Blue." Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've read, I try and keep up so that I'm knowledgeable enough to discuss these things. But, like I said, those two books I brought out on purpose because, Huck Finn's been under fire for 150 years and Hal's been under fire for almost 100 years.
Notice how he says he read, but then he didn't say he actually read that book. He says, yeah, that he's heard of it. Now, here's a quick sample of the content of that book, All Boys Aren't Blue. As you can see, explicit sexual content. Plain and simple, doesn't belong in the hands of kids.
So this is not an issue that's gone away. It may be different reasons, but people have these issues, and you got to work through them. You've got to, everybody's got to educate themselves. That's what I push is everybody reads books, make some decisions, and then keep up with your kids, man. Just, what are your children reading? If you don't know what your kids are reading, if you don't know what your kids are reading on the internet, there's a world out there, and if you're not having good, open conversations with your kids, and you're not, doing what you need to do, don't blame the supplier, blame the person who's not doing their job on their end. That's how I feel.
This is something they all do. So they're constantly pointing the finger back at the parents. Yes, kudos to Mr. Blackwell for pointing out the fact that parents being involved is crucial. Parents definitely have got to be deeply involved in the lives of their children and what's going on in their schools and what the things they're learning and reading. But he and those on the left like to constantly point the finger back at the parents. It's your fault that if the kid reads something inappropriate, it's your fault. You weren't watching them close enough. Anybody ever heard of in loco parentis? Well, when kids are in public schools, the staff at the schools, mostly the teachers, are acting in the place of parents. All right, so it's their responsibility when the kids are under their care to protect the kids from harm. That includes physical, that includes psychological, that includes all the above, folks.
Both sides of the story have things that they disagree with, and so I think if you can find a middle ground and educate yourself, and then say, this may not be for me, but I can see how it would be for others. I think that's where we need to be. We just need to be open and thoughtful and considerate of other people. And if we're banning books on either side, or we're burning books, or we're telling people what they can't look at, I don't think we're being considerate or responsible.
The only possible way for a book ban to happen is for the government to round up all the books available that people are aware of in the public, round them up and destroy them, literally burn them. That's the only way to ban the books, to make it illegal to sell them from private entities. That's the only way, okay? So when they call this book bans, when they call these book burning, they're being extremely hyperbolic on purpose. They're trying to use this lingo to make right-wingers, conservatives, Christians sound so extreme. We're not banning books. We just want restrictions on the books that are not appropriate for kids. That's all.
And I think we should support our schools. Schools have the hardest job in the world, and they're making decisions that might not suit you, but they're trying to make decisions that suit the greatest good. So that's how I believe.
I see. Yeah. That How book. I understand the author. There's Allen Ginsberg.
Right.
For that one.
He was a famous poet in the 50s. So.
Yeah, I heard he was a big activist for the NAMBLA group too.
I don't know about that. I have no idea about that.
I have to admit, this was the fun part of the conversation when I brought up the fact that Allen Ginsberg had an association with NAMBLA, which is a national pedophile group that promotes getting rid of age of consent laws. This apparently, if you look through, read up on Allen Ginsberg, he apparently was connected with this group, and they praise him on their website and his affiliation with them. But yeah, you could hear in Mr. Blackwell's voice that it dawned on him that this conversation wasn't the kind of conversation he thought it was going to be. And red flags suddenly went up, signals went up for him. And when he caught on that I was maybe going to use his words, expose him to the public, he started to kind of go into panic mode. He started to lecture me about how he thought I was dishonest and how he wished I had been up front and told him I was going to record him, which, of course, I find that if you tell people you're going to record them, they're a little more reserved in the things that they'll say. I've found that to be the truth. Now, he of course, he was saying, like, I don't give you permission to use my words. I don't give you permission to use my words out of context, etc., etc. And I hope I think in one place he said, I hope you are honest about what I say. Which, of course, I'm going to post these full clips so people can hear the entire conversation. That way, people can hear the unedited version. But of course, I'm clipping them out so I can discuss and educate. In one place, he even says, we could start this conversation over again if you would just delete that, and he worded it something like that, and we could start this again and start this out honestly together and be respectful and dignified or some such. And he said, I would have never said anything different had I known, or had I not been recorded or something like that. Which makes me kind of wonder, like, if that's the case, then why are you panicking? Why are you freaking out? I think he was kind of combing back through the things he had just said to me, like wondering, did I just say something that could get me in trouble or make me lose my position? Well, possibly. I mean, you are, Mr. Blackwell, opposing this law that would protect kids from obscene material in schools. You are doing what you think is right and promoting freedom to give kids this content that is wildly inappropriate. I mean, literally, genderqueer, lawn boy, that other book I mentioned, they discuss in detail anal sex. They discuss oral sex. Either they'll talk about it or they'll put it in like cartoon format. They'll discuss how to. Some of these books teach kids how to masturbate. They talk about urinating on each other for sex, for pleasure. It's disgusting. And this stuff does not belong in schools. Plain and simple. See, here's the defense that some of these people use. They'll be like, well, if the book has literary or artistic value, if the rest of the pages have literary or artistic value, it doesn't matter what these 2-3 pages say, as long as the 400-page book tells a nice story about a poor kid from South Detroit who just struggled all his life, and he had to hide his identity from his parents. He didn't want to come out to his parents. And you're not being inclusive if you want to ban this book because you're just wanting to ban it because the kid's gay. It's not because of the porn. It's literally, you terrible Christian conservatives. And I mean, they try to put people in this trap. I'm rambling a little, but that's the thing. You'll have these few pages of literal pornography wrapped up in a story that might actually have some literary or artistic value without the pornography. But here's the example I like to use. You can put lipstick on a pig. You can put them in a tutu. You could even do their lashes, but it's still a pig. You could take a venomous snake, put it in a cardboard box. You could wrap it up in a nice pretty bow. The package could be so artistic and so valuable. You could wrap it with gold and silver lining on the outside. And you could layer it, layer upon layer upon layer upon, with beautiful packaging and wrapping. And it could have so much value on the outside. And give it to a child. And that child starts to pull up that beautiful packaging and looks at all the pretty bows as they point it off, some of the confetti that's fallen off. But as soon as the child opens it on the inside, what's going to happen? The bite. The poison. It only takes one page, it only takes one paragraph of inappropriate material that a child has never been exposed to, even if they have. Folks, it is none of your business, teachers, principals, counselors in these schools. It is none of your business to be using taxpayer-funded material and giving it to kids, no matter how inclusive you think you're being when you do it. But, of course, some of my words are probably falling on deaf ears, talking to you all. That's why I'm speaking mainly to my sole audience, Christian conservatives, those who are willing to make a difference and stop this evil.
What I encourage is for anybody in a position, especially of influence over children, is for you to do everything in your power to protect children from harm. And one thing that is very harmful to children is exposing them to sexual content that they are not developmentally appropriate for and they're not ready for. Right.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I do think it's as I said, I think parents need to be aware of what their kids are being, reading and looking at. The telephone is the number one issue that I worry about. Parents are allowing children, free reign on a telephone, and there's just so much out there. A kid can be in the next room on a telephone. Parents need to be responsible, but I don't think anyone disagrees with your point. Now, I don't know your method of going about it or your definitions, but
like I said, they won't admit to it. They won't word it that way. He's going to say, well, of course I don't believe in giving porn to kids. He's using He's using the cover of the Obscenity Exemption Statute. He's using the cover of, well, it's educational material. Well, it's what the teachers deem appropriate. It's not technically porn. Yeah, it's basically what it boils down to is we're being gaslit by these people. You don't think anyone disagrees with that, Mr. Blackwell? Well, then how about you just stop being on team give porn to kids and join our side? That'd be good. Yeah. I doubt it, because you probably make too much money doing what you're doing right now. I'm done listening to this one. Let's move on to the other gentleman I spoke with. This was Brian Rates. Now, this man is the director of the Parkersburg and Wood County Public Library. A couple key things I noted about Mr. Rates' points that he made when he spoke at the hearing. He talks of being a Christian and about not gatekeeping content that kids read. So I decided to give this man a call as well. He spilled the beans a little bit more than Mr. Blackwell did. Here's a little bit of that conversation.
Parkersburg Wood County Library, Brian speaking.
Hi, is this Mr. Brian Rates?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ron Hurst III. I'm a West Virginian and a parent. I had heard your comments on House Bill 4654 in that hearing the other day, and I just wanted to express gratitude for you speaking up.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad that you explained your position and how you don't think that librarians should be gatekeepers of thought and expression.
We don't try to put an agenda forward or anything like that. If we're doing our job well, we're receptive to the community that we serve and try to meet everybody's needs and try to make it the greatest access for everyone in our community. That's our goal.
Regarding like age restrictions, I know some of these parents make a big deal, and they're talking about how they just want certain books age restricted, and I'm assuming y'all have policy on that already.
Yeah, we don't do that. We don't. The only time we ever lock up materials in our collection is when we want to protect the materials from the patrons. So that would be like things that are often vandalized or we worry about being stolen and not being able to replace. Usually like the genealogy and the history collection and stuff like that. We don't make decisions to be, again, that would be a gatekeeper labeling things as good or bad. That puts a restriction right there in people's minds. It's like, well, these are bad materials. We leave all of our policies are aimed at making sure that the parents have the full authority to make that decision. And
all right, so you heard it from him. He considers putting age restrictions on books to be gatekeeping. Something tells me he's never, ever heard of the adult section in video stores. For those of you who are old enough to know what those are. I guess the Blockbuster workers there were gatekeeping the Hustler videos, you know?
By monitoring what their own kids do, but also in regards to library cards for their kids that have access, they're aware that card gives them access to everything in the collection. And most parents are very wise about how they handle that. And they determine when a kid gets a library card and how they use that card. And it's worked well for decades. What we're running into is people that don't really understand how libraries operate.
All right, quick hypothetical here. So what about the kids who are walking into the public libraries without their parents? Some kids are old enough to walk down the street, or at least their parents let them walk down the street with their own library card and walk in. Maybe it's a 15 or 16-year-old, and they're walking into these libraries without their parents. Are these libraries breaking the law when these teenagers come in and get these books? What if Oh, here's the other question I want to ask. What if the kids are walking in with adults that are not their parents? How are you to know that the adults with the kids are actually their parents? Maybe the law is being skirted in these scenarios. Yeah.
Reading is an escape for especially for youth, and like a 13-year-old should be able to come in and sit down and escape from the world and sit down and maybe pick up All Boys Aren't Blue and read that, don't you think? I mean, they got to be able to.
I that would be up to that parent. But yeah, that's a freedom that each parent has to decide for their own kids. You know, whether they go to the library on their own or not. And
I mean, what would we do without people like you? I mean, standing up for freedom to let the parents come in and get their kids some books about anal sex and oral sex, so they can teach that with taxpayer-funded books. You know.
I don't know about that, sir. I don't know about that.
Oh, well, one more question. Does law enforcement need to check your hard drive?
No, they don't.
Okay. All right. Are you sure?
Yes.
Yes, I went there.
Use taxpayer-funded money that pays for those books and give it to the kids instead of doing that with their own money, right? You stood up and was against that bill the other day, and God is watching you, and He hears everything you say.
Yes, it does. And I pray to Him every day.
We will all be judged for our actions and our words.
And I pray for the people that are upset with me.
I don't agree with your position. I very much actually disagree with it, and especially with you quoting Bible, trying to use that as a shield and a defense to provide this material to kids.
It is not a defense, sir. When I get up there and said that, honestly, that is my guide in my life.
Strong disagree there. Yeah. The only reason to bring up Bible in the context of defending these books is if you're saying, like, I'm a Christian and I believe that kids should be able to read genderqueer. I'm a Christian and I think that 13-year-old learning about how to give oral sex to another 13-year-old, that's a blessing of liberty. Yeah. When it's definitely a shield that people try to use when they make that statement. I mean, they think that by quoting the Bible, that other Christians are going to be like, oh, well, he thinks like me. He quotes Bible. That means he's on the right side. Yeah. It's kind of, honestly, in my opinion, snake-like behavior.
That is the greatest commandment is my daily theme and how I live my life, and I try to live my life the way the Lord would want me to.
I understand, but you got to understand there's scripture. There's scripture that speaks out against the evils of fornication and adultery, and exposing kids to this content is going to tempt them into those kind of lifestyles. And you are in a position to where you can actually protect those kids and advocate to keep them from those sins. I want you to understand that.
Censorship is a very slippery slope, and I worry about God's Word and the Bible always being available. And as a Christian, I have to defend and make sure that truth is always available.
I get it, but
in order to do that, I have to fight censorship in any way.
When the founders of this nation penned the Constitution and they penned the First Amendment, do you think they had in their minds to protect to protect the ability or give people the ability to expose young children to pornographic material and obscene material.
The only people I saw subjecting young children to this are the people that keep up getting up and speaking about it and forcing others to see it and listen to it.
Yeah.
See, he's making one of the common points that these child groomers and communists use. They like to say, well, it's not teachers who are putting out this material to the public for kids to consume. It's those crazy conservatives who are getting up there in these hearings and reading this stuff out loud that's doing it. Yeah, well, they're exposing it to the public because of the denial of people like Mr. Brian Rates, people like Mr. Mickey Blackwell. They're exposing this content to the public because there are many parents who don't know how graphic some of this material can get. They think it's some general stuff. Like the one example that Mr. Blackwell used was Huck Finn. Huck Finn doesn't have any detailed sexual content. It's got racism in it, and racism is not looked at in a positive light in the book. If you actually read the book, neither is To Kill a Mockingbird. But you see, they try to make it look like they're always pointing the fingers at everybody else. It's projection, folks. They want this content to stay secret. They want it to stay secretive. They want teachers to be able to assign this content to kids, let kids read this stuff in schools. They want kids to read this stuff in the public libraries, and they don't want parents to have full knowledge of what these books actually say. That's God's honest truth. It's what it boils down to. That's why all the gaslighting, that's why all the panicking when they realize that their words are going to be recorded. That's it.
We live in a world that is born to God's love. But our job is to reach out and to spread God's word. And they see that. They see me at the front of that, and so they're angry and they're lashing out at me because they see the culture going in this direction. And I understand. I understand your anger.
Listen, I'm
willing to take that, but I have to also follow the guidelines of the law. I also have to follow the guidelines of my ethics and also maintaining a collection that serves everyone in our community, even the ones I disagree with.
Do you agree
I have to do that.
Do you agree that the law can be wrong? At times, we know in the history of this country there are laws that had to be repealed because they were unjust. And because good, holy men and women stood up and fought against them. And I believe you're on the wrong side of this, sir. One more scripture in the book of Proverbs, I believe, it says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." I think you're being the enemy to these children, and you're kissing them. You have a pretense of love, and you want to protect quote unquote free speech. But all you're doing is leading them on the way to hell by allowing this stuff.
I don't think so, sir. And the patrons of our library have spoken up and said that, and they continue to tell us that individually.
So his defense is that because some parents join him in defending these garbage books, he thinks that he's on the right side. Can't make this stuff up, folks.
There's nothing in this, and I can say this with 100% confidence. There is nothing in this collection that is obscene or pornographic in regards to the law.
It's okay. I strongly disagree with your position. I still don't think it's right. I don't think it's morally right for taxpayer-funded pornographic material to be in our libraries. I do classify it as pornographic. Many people do, despite what the law currently says, and that can be changed, which is what we're fighting for. But the getting rid of these obscenity exemption laws is what we're hoping to do, just so we can put age restrictions 18 plus on many of these books. That's all we want. And if because it's taxpayer funded, and if parents want to teach their kids this stuff, they can go buy it from private sellers, and they can give it to their kids in their own personal time on their own personal dime.
Well, this episode has certainly been fun to put together for you all. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. I hope it was a little bit entertaining. Most of all, I hope it motivates you to get up off your butt. If you've been sitting around too much, if you've been twiddling your thumbs, wondering what you could do to protect kids, I hope it motivates you to fight to protect these kids. One way you can help me in my fight is to share this video. Give it a like. Give the Lion Tribe a follow. Follow me on Facebook. Follow the Lion Tribe on Twitter if you're on there. Follow us on TikTok. You can always donate to the tribe. I always try to include the donation link in the description of all my videos. I am not the only one fighting for these kids. I'm just a small channel, small business. But I intend to grow this cause. Me and my tribe. If you want to be part of the tribe, send me a message. You know what? Kids are worth protecting. The innocence of children is worth preserving. Remember, folks, be bold as lions.